Narancia gets tongue-tied and Giorno has a long swim with a shark. Greetings, my friends! It's time to take a look at another exciting episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Golden Wind. Here's that spoiler warning. Make sure to go check out the episode, then jump back to this review. Before I actually talk about the episode, I just want to give some further thoughts about the brand new intro of the show. In my last review, I claimed that I didn't like it as much as the first intro, Fighting Gold, and my feelings are still pretty much the same. However, I will say that I am actually warming up to the intro a little bit more. I've watched it a couple of more times. I appreciate the song as well as all of the imagery, but I still just don't feel it packs the punch that Fighting Gold has. That being said, it's far from the worst intro that I've ever seen, to the point where I'd still consider it one of the coolest intros that I've actually seen from all of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, so I really like it. As for the ending Modern Crusaders by Enigma, I love that ending. I mean, it's not as ridiculous and hilarious as the very first Jodeci ending, but I absolutely love the imagery of the pillar of all the stands, and the song itself just completely works with this type of series. I listened to that, like, many times, and it's definitely one of my favorite songs from the entire series, and one of my favorite endings from all of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But let's go ahead and jump into this episode right here, which is all about Narancia doing battle with Squalo and Tiziano and their stands, the Talking Head, and Clash. So one thing that I think is kind of funny about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is whenever they have these episodes where they're trying to look for the enemy stand user, it's hilarious because they should always just look out for the person who looks like a JoJo character. You know what I mean. The guys who are basically dressed like the members of Motley Crue. Guys who are extremely effeminate and over the top. I mean, they stick out like an absolute sore thumb. And that's what made this episode kind of funny for me, as Narancia is desperately running around the streets of Venice trying to find these two stand users when, well, I mean, just use your eyes. They're the only weird guys who look like 1980s hair metal rockers. The only reason I say that is because pretty much every other side character in the series, or like every other background character, just looks like a normal person. Like, there's really nothing about them that sticks out. And that's why I always think it's funny that they're always like, where could these stand users be? But this episode was incredibly tense as Narancia was doing battle with the Clash stand, a shark which has the ability to exist in any body of water. And he has his jaws down on Giorno as he's constantly moving from puddle to puddle. And watching Narancia try to actually capture him is one of the best things about this entire episode, especially because Giorno is actually managing to help out despite the fact that he's basically having his throat ripped out throughout most of the episode. Narancia desperately tries to use his Aerosmith to shoot him, but this is when Giorno decides to actually use this to advantage, allowing himself to get shot so that there would be residue from those bullets, allowing Narancia to basically track him and the Clash all over this restaurant, which is a really funny scene. Funny in the sense that there's luckily no one around at all, and it all eventually leads to them going into this kitchen where they're jumping from like all of these pots and pans which are filled with boiling water, and they all get extinguished, which starts to fill the room with gas, which means Narancia can't use Aerosmith for the fear that things are just going to suddenly explode. He calls for all of his other members of the gang to come in, and when Mista arrives, he starts to fire his gun directly at this shark creature, and of course, Narancia tells him to shoot. This is all because of Tiziano's stand Talking Head, which he strategically uses to suddenly cut it off so that he can call his friends, and then turns it back on, forcing Mista to shoot this thing, causing the room to just blow up and have all of them get damaged, allowing the shark and Giorno to make their escape, but not before Giorno actually leaves behind one of his ladybug buttons. Every single time he leaves one of those things around now, I know that it's going to be a part of a secret plan. He used it in a previous episode, and it's used to an amazing effect in this one right here. Narancia goes outside, and he's desperately trying to find them, and what's really cool about this scene is that he actually does manage to hurt Squalo, and because of this, he's able to look for all of his labored breathing, which allows him to get closer to them. And when he finally starts to get close, he actually uses this trick where he says that he actually claims that he finds them in order to cause him to panic and make his breathing get even more erratic. I especially love that Tiziano still thinks that his stand is actually being used until it's revealed that Narancia cuts off his fucking tongue. Think about that for a second. He's lost his tongue twice in the span of 2 episodes, and when you think about what's going on in the story, this has probably all happened in the span of just a couple of minutes, so So damn, that's fucking insane. He cut off his own tongue so that he could actually get rid of his stand. But since he cut off his own tongue, how is he able to even speak in the first place? That's where Giorno's button actually comes into play. Giorno gave this to him so that it could actually become like a temporary tongue for him, being able to speak. And of course, he eventually does find these two guys, and he just ends up lighting up both of them, with Tiziano actually jumping in front of Squalo, trying to protect him and getting killed in the process, and then of course Squalo going on the attack with his stand, which suddenly jumps on Narancia and starts to like go inside of his body, biting into his neck and trying to like rip his throat out. But still, that's not going to stop him at all, as he uses Aerosmith to lift Squalo in the air and blast him multiple times. It's so crazy and insane, because you just have to imagine that everyone around them have got to be like, what the fuck is going on? Why is that guy flying around in the air? Why is there blood squirting all over the place? And yet you never really get too much of a reaction from people outside of, huh, I wonder if that guy bleeding over there is okay. So what's the rundown on this episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? A definitely great episode of cat and mouse. It's one of those episodes that always has a bunch of twists and turns, and again proves that the battles of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure are the best thing about it. They're always really inventive, and it doesn't really matter what sort of stand you have. If you have a good strategy, you could potentially win. And this episode was a great showcase for Narancia. While he is definitely the most dense member of the group and arguably the most stupid, he can still manage to come up with some really great plans, and throughout most of the episode, he did a pretty great job. I think the best twist was towards the end of the episode when he cut off his tongue in order to get rid of Tiziano's stand, but the fact that he was able to utilize Giorno's button to transform that into a brand new tongue for himself was just fucking insane. I absolutely loved it. It's the best things about JoJo are those twists and turns. There's always a twist after the twist after the twist. That's the best thing about this one right here. That and just the overall crazy imagery of watching Giorno get stuck in all these various different bodies of water. It makes no sense that he would be able to fit in like a glass or even like a cooking pot, but they actually pulled it off in this episode. It speaks for the power of the Clash stand, which can move in any sort of body of water. I especially love the imagery of it actually appearing like in the blood on Narancia's shoulder. That was actually all a part of Tiziano's plan. Not only was he trying to save Squalo, but he actually created a water source for him, because when they were cornered, there was no way for the Clash to actually get used. So he allowed himself to get hit so blood would squirt all over Narancia, allowing him to summon the Clash on his body. It's moments like that that just make this one of the most creative action series that I've ever seen. That made this episode fantastic. It was a great two-parter. It looks like we're finally going to get away from Venice after this episode. And this was a great showcase for two of the brand new assassin characters. They're really going to have to up the ante after this, though, because for Narancia to be able to take out two of them on his own, they're really going to have to bring bigger guns to the party if they're going to want to take down Bruno and his boys. So yeah, this episode was fucking insane, but I really loved it. I especially loved how at the end of the episode, Narancia recognized the true strength of Giorno, how he's always sort of like the trump card for their team, and if they continue to use him and his abilities and take his advice, it's only a matter of time before they can take over the organization. Loved this episode right here. I'm giving it a 5 out of 5. You guys need to check it out, and I would love to get your thoughts about it. You can tell me all of them in the comments section below. Thank you all for watching this review. Make sure to check out the channel for tons of other anime reviews. I just did a quick sort of review and impressions on the very first season of High Score Girl, a video game themed anime series that you guys should definitely check out, so make sure to check that out. I'll actually put a link for that video in the description box below, and like I said, let's just get a discussion going about this episode and what you hope to see from the rest of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind. Thank you all for watching this review. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay down there, baby.